Those of you that are joining us, welcome. Thank you for coming on and joining us on whatever weather you have. We have some rain and snow down here in Jersey. We're actually at the shore area. We are just north of Atlantic City, but south of New York, where our group is from. My name is Susan M. Hartz-Video. I am with the Garden State Daylily Growers. I am the president actually of our group, and Michael Alvarado, who's going to be my wingman today, is also on as our vice president. So I want to welcome you all there. We are Region 3. In our group, we're most of us are all from New Jersey. And I also work as a horticulturist for the Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and again, in Ocean County. So I was able to combine both a love and a job together to help bring Karol Emmerich to you all. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. So again, if you want in the chat, please put where you're from so we can see, what states everybody's from. And I want to introduce, we'll just go right into it. I want to introduce Karol Emmerich, Springwood Gardens in Minnesota, in Jordan, in Minnesota. Region 2? 1, darn it.
Where it all began.
Region 1, where it all began. And I'm going to let Karol just go right from there. And we will, we're going to work this through. We may have some glitches. I am actually Karol's slide sorter, so that she's going to present and I'm going to moving the slides. So hopefully we can, I'll keep this together because our internet connection was so couple times. So we want to make sure that everybody gets to enjoy. So
yeah, it's very slow from where I am. So Susan's doing heroic duty here to try to match my words with the slides. So okay. Thanks.
I'm just going to turn my video off, Karol, so you can still hear me, but
okay.
And if you want yours on, which I know you said you didn't, so you want to, there's a little.
No, you can leave the video on. I'm okay with that.
For you?
So,
okay.
Yeah, I've gotten used to it with all these other things and the chat box popping up and everything, but I'll be fine. Okay.
Yeah, the chat box you can stay off to the side. So, okay. So we are ready to go when you are.
Terrific. All right. When I retired from the corporate world in 1993, one of my goals was to create a garden on the recently acquired lot next door. I wanted to paint the end of our cul-de-sac with flowers. I wanted the garden to be so unexpectedly beautiful that everyone who came would forget the cares of the day. It would be handicapped accessible with a cool breeze and lots of shade. I also wanted it to be educational, so I labeled each of the thousands of plants that would be there. The garden took 4 years of hard work, but the hours flew by, and by the time I was finished, I had more than 1,000 daylily cultivars, 325 varieties of hosta, and 600 other perennial varieties. And I just loved being able to introduce them to all the visitors. This is how the shady part turned out.
Oops, it is in a second. Okay, there we go. Okay.
That was actually at the National Convention in 2007.
Okay. I know they're so beautiful.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And this is how the sunny part, where all the daylilies were, turned out. Little did I know at the time that this was just going to be our practice garden, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. You can see in the foreground here, one of my favorites by Munson. I especially loved those clear watermarks that you can see. See that purple one was sort of the chalky watermark. I wish they had better, that's okay, you can just stop on, say stop.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I wish these had better bud count so they bloom longer. And I wish they were fancier, but there wasn't much I could do about that, and they were the very best that existed at the time. Creating my own flowers, yeah, why don't you go to the next one?
Sorry.
Yeah, like Cameroon's here, you can see it up close. He's close enough. But creating my own wasn't really on the radar until hybridizer friend Gary Shaban mentioned that if you breed them and introduce them, you can name them. And I thought of all the comments I got about the names of the plants from my visitors and the meaningful conversations that might more easily occur if I had a garden full of inspirational names. Still not wanting to take the plunge, I did a search for the types of names that I had in mind, and then I discovered that they were mostly on flowers that either were not northern hardy or they had really boring faces. So I had a new mission in life to create drop-dead gorgeous flowers with inspirational names that would stop visitors in their tracks. I had no idea if that would be possible because I had absolutely no clue how to hybridize. Well, for some reason, right then I started to daydream about millions of people going to their local garden centers and seeing my next one, Susan. Susan? Are we stuck?
Oh dear.
Sorry, did we lose Susan?
Oh,
Get off the.
We lost it. Michael,
Yeah, I'm here.
did we lose Susan?
I'll try calling. Yeah, I'll call her.
If not, I can try a share screen from here, knowing that we're going to have a delay. Sorry, everybody.
not your fault.
She's back on again.
She's back on?
Yes. She says she's starting.
Okay, great. Bad weather, I think, huh?
The computer froze.
Oh, that's no fun.
No, no.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Okay.
Was that Sandra Dunn on there
I saw her.
who talked about teaching Zoom?
It was me, Carol.
Hi, nice to see
Hi.
you. Well, sorry to
This
see you.
just became a regular occurrence. You'd be all set and technology would let you down. Because as amazing as it is that we can all be from all around the country looking at your slides, it can still go like this every once in a while.
Wow. Well, when I did it from here, there was like a 10-second delay. So we had thought that that wasn't going to be a very good idea because it wouldn't be in sync, but we may end up needing to do that.
I'm sorry, I'm coming. Hold on. I got to get the PowerPoint back up. That's a laptop and it decided to say no more. Okay.
Sorry.
Let me
Okay.
just, I know. Sorry. Let me just, now I'm nervous. Okay.
It's all right.
All right, let me get my share screen back up here. Oh, my goodness gracious. It's always something. The love of doing stuff from home, it's okay. Let's just say from current slide, and then I just have to move forward. So
Just go
sorry,
fast.
I'm not going to make anybody. Yep.
until the people in their
Screaming,
track.
right?
You're there, right? Okay, now.
Okay, sorry, everybody.
So these are my drop dead word. This is in my mind, everybody now. I wanted to create, remember, I can't hybridize yet. I have no clue, but I wanted to create flowers that would stop people in their tracks. I had no idea how to do it, but then I started to daydream about millions of people going to their garden centers. Next, Susan, thank you. And seeing my plants with these special names in bloom. So instead of just painting the end of our cul-de-sac with color, I decided I wanted to paint the whole world with color. Not too big of an ambition there. And that was before I'd ever made or planted even one seed. But I did know exactly the kind of daylilies I wanted to create. They would be northern hardy with outstanding clear color. They'd be large and round or triangular at 7 inches instead of the more typical 5 inches. I wanted fancy edges with lots of ruffles. I wanted them better opening, especially purple ones, which just didn't open very well in the north back then. I wanted no slicking on the darker ones, much better scapes so they would bloom longer, and instant rebloom. I especially liked colors like these.
Mhm.
And this next one.
Sorry, my
That's okay.
antivirus come up. Okay.
That's okay. And I remember one specific flower that I wanted to create. I wanted to create the flower with the color on the left here that you see, the form of the middle one, which happens to be Solideo Gloria, and the edge of the right one, which is Vision of Things to Come. And to this day, I still haven't made that flower yet, but I guess I'll keep working on that. Well, so what to do next on this journey to become one of God's bumblebees? Well, first I needed to learn everything I could about how to hybridize. Interestingly, that period in Daylily history, about 25 years ago, turned out to be a renaissance. Dozens and dozens and dozens of people felt the same hybridizing passion stirring in their hearts as I did. All of us were longing for more color and creativity in our lives and in our souls. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into and how our lives would be transformed. Even though most of us were in our 40s and 50s, we felt like giddy teenagers brimming with excitement as we would pile into cars and vans for road trips. We would go to gardens and events to see, to buy, to learn. We were like kids on a grand adventure, exploring a new world. Sort of like rock star groupies, following our favorite hybridizers from place to place to see their new flowers. Many of our idols resided near each other in Florida, and people came from all over the world to see and purchase their latest creations. A frequent question among Daylily hybridizers was, are you going to Mecca in Florida, or the Midwinter Symposium in Chattanooga, or the Myrtle Beach hybridizer meeting this year? The large Chattanooga Choo-Choo Ballroom was packed for many years with hundreds of people attending.
Wow.
Groups sprung up all over the country to help people learn from each other, like the Spring Fling that we held here in Region 1 for many years. You know, some of us went to almost everything, so we saw each other a lot and we became really good friends. We were a very diverse bunch in terms of backgrounds and beliefs, although most of us were similar in age. But this flower brought us together.
Wow.
Because of our common bond, people you never would have thought you'd be close to become good friends with. We became great friends despite our differences. After all, we each spent most of our waking hours during hybridizing and evaluation and shipping and website season doing the exact same thing. We shared most of the same challenges, and we understood the breakthroughs, the triumphs no outsider could.
Wow.
Although each of us had our own vision for what we'd like to create, we were all tied closely together by our passion and our dreams. Many of us began to wistfully daydream of someday possibly winning the Stout medal for the best daylily. And some were afraid that if they didn't plant every single seed, that they might be unintentionally throwing away that Stout medal winner. Most beginning hybridizers start like this, and they think that's what they're going to make when they get this cross. But this next slide is what they will probably get.
Whoops.
From carefully listening to all the meetings I went to and to all my teachers, well, I knew better than that. I started with northern hardy flowers with good color, and these are some that I used. And these at the time were the best available in their color ranges. Things like Seminole Wind, Chance Encounter, Joan Dairyfield, Respighi, Mephistopheles, and Shaka Zulu. Well, to those great northern hardy flowers, I added southern flowers like these to get the fancy edges, good opening, no slicking, and rebloom. They were things like Lifting Me Higher, Clothed in Glory, Fortune's Dearest, J.T. Davis, Senegal, and Ed Brown. I used a greenhouse to keep the tender ones alive. Well, I soon learned that lots of the kids from the southern genetics were not even remotely hardy in the north, and that also lots of the southern plants were rotters and passed that on to their kids. I tried crossing pretty much everything, every form, everything, but the spiders. Well, there turned out to be a lot of train wrecks in my early years and ugly flowers. And I hit a lot of brick walls in terms of hardiness, bud count, spotting, and being able to get distinction. But all it took were a few that had the qualities I was looking for to get my program going on the right path. I first bloomed Heartbeat of Heaven in 2000, and you should have seen me dance up and down the aisle when I saw that flower. It was out of a beautiful pod parent that I'd created. It was out of Fortune's Dearest and Lifting Me Higher, and it was a rotter and it was not hardy. But when I put it with Doyle Pierce, which is out of Tet Lavender Blue Baby, that makes Daylilies super hardy and basically rot proof, even though it was created down in Texas, it was super hardy. And that's where I got Heartbeat of Heaven. And Heartbeat of Heaven is hardy, rot proof. The kids are fabulous. They go on for generations. It's in the background of the majority of my introductions at least once, and sometimes many, many, many times in its various offspring. Over time, my goals evolved to also discovering outstanding parents, which is what more than half of my current customers are looking for, since they're also hybridizers. Things like For Better, For Worse, Desire of Nations, Every Knee Shall Bow, which takes my breath away, All Things to All Men, Ruler of Nations, Pray Without Ceasing, Sea of Glass, Broken Chains. Not only are all of these great parents, but they're also terrific garden flowers. As you look at them, think about what a change these flowers are from the ones I showed you that I started out with. You know, that was the best, remember, the best of the north and the best of the south. And from those, I got this. Took a while. People call these fancy flowers with watermarks and ruffles Karol's look. And because many people in recent years have used my genetics, this look is now pretty widespread. For example, excluding my own introductions out of them, so far people have introduced more than 70 out of Heartbeat of Heaven, 36 out of All Things to All Men, 32 out of Desire of Nations, and so on. Since I started hybridizing seriously in 1998, I've introduced 221 daylilies, and people actually seem to like most of them as much as I do. Over the years, they've received a bunch of awards, including 1 Stout, 6 Awards of Merit, 48 honorable mentions, and 2 specialty awards. There's a link on my website at springwoodgardens.com that shows pictures of all the award winners in a separate section if you're interested. When, as far as my daydreams of the flowers being in garden centers everywhere, that has come true. Many years ago, the daylily buyer from Walter's Gardens in Grand Rapids, Michigan, saw my website and decided to visit the garden. He bought a lot of my plants for the long task of multiplication by hand in their daylily fields until they get enough to start selling them, which is at least 10,000, and it's often 20, 30,000 or more. So they've had them quite a long time now. The first one was Storm Shelter. It went into their Proven Winners program and it's been really popular. There's now a total of 6 of mine in their wholesale catalog. On the left side here and in the middle.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And the bare root plants are sold to garden centers in the US and Canada, as well as to several catalog companies and online sellers. The 3 on the right will be offered between now and 2025, and there's more in the pipeline after that. Well, as for painting the whole world with flowers, well, not quite yet, although lots have made their way to countries in Europe as well as Russia. For several years, there was even a website in Russian about what I was up to. Some are also in other parts of the former Soviet Union, Pakistan, and small pockets elsewhere, plus a lot in Canada. Because all the flowers I've introduced are on my website, I'm not going to be showing them today, other than is there in a parentage. But I wanted you to know that on the website for each introduction, there's a picture of them on their best and worst and average day and any other significant variation. And I have a picture of the scapes. When I started the website in 2003, I thought that way too many people were only showing their flowers on their very best day. I thought that full disclosure was really important for the buyer because a lot of daylilies just don't look the same every day. Most of you probably noticed that in your own garden. This summer, I saw some especially fascinating variations in how the daylilies look, especially among the seedlings. We had it all: drought, super high heat, humidity, and every once in a while it would cool down. You know, I like the variations sometimes, but it can sure make evaluation confusing. You know, this summer I had a really hard time finding the killer flower that I saw on the next day because it had changed its color or its form or its patterning. It was sort of like being a contestant in a game show, but instead of I can name that tune in 3 notes, it's like, can I name that daylily in 3 seconds or 3 tries, I hope. So other days it's like playing to tell the truth or consequences. So instead of will the real astronaut stand up, it's will the real thistles and thorns please stand up. This is thistles and thorns. On the left, it's in the heat of the summer, and on the right, it's at the end of the summer when it's much cooler. Hard to believe it's the same. So what are the reasons a daylily can look so different in someone else's garden and also so different from day to day in your own garden in terms of color, form, and pattern? Well, there's heat versus cold, sun versus clouds or shade, the humidity level, the amount of rainfall or water from the hose or sprinkler, or the soil pH, and even how much UV they have on them. And as we all know, there's big differences in cameras in terms of color intensity and vibrancy. That's something to really be careful of. Anyway, the UV thing is especially noticeable in the greenhouse. I've rescued more than one blah greenhouse flower from the compost pile by just picking the flower and taking it out in the sunlight. God Save the Queen's probably my most dramatic example. The one on the left, see how brown that is? That's in the greenhouse. And then it turns a lavender, and I know it's much prettier than the one on the right in other people's gardens. So, but because I am looking at the one on the left and I know that's in the genes there, I just didn't use it because I want my flowers to be good in both places, in or out, because that's a combination of giving me knowledge. Anyway, the next 7 slides are just a few examples of what I saw this summer. Cool weather versus warm weather, shaded versus sun. Some days it does, Light of the World in its background has a flower that's a double. So that's where that Jenny kissed me. So this is strange, different looks.
Wow.
This is one of those where, if you see the one in the top middle there, go back one, Susan.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Just go back to one, yeah, that one there. See the one with all that big shiny thing in the middle. When it did it that day, I just went crazy. And then the clump of it was right to the left of it. And then the whole rest of the season, it was that blah on the right. So anyway, next one.
Okay.
So a couple of conclusions from this. First, if you've purchased, you can do the next, yeah. Don't be too quick to assume if you've gotten a plant from a reputable seller that you've received the wrong plant when it first blooms. You know, if you get one of those, oh no, well, did you see that on Facebook where people bought it at a store that said there's 3 roots in this package and it has a fake name on it and stuff? Yeah, but if you're getting it from a good seller, don't be too quick to assume you've got the wrong plant. Give it a little while. But if you only want daylilies in your garden that look the same every day, look on the internet for images of that flower to see if they all look alike, or ask the hybridizer or other folks who have it. early on when I started collecting daylilies, I got several of the candy series, strawberry candy, elegant candy, and so on. They were absolutely perfect every single day. Depending on your personality, that can be either very good, or in my case, super boring. And I stopped looking at them when I was on my garden walks. Right. The next pictures are my favorite seedlings from this summer. On many, it's their first year of bloom. As you look at each slide, see if you can figure out what I might have been thinking when I made the cross.
Yep, I'll sit there.
The pod parent's going to be on the top left, and the pollen parent, why don't you go back just one?
Sorry.
Why don't you go back a few to the what was I thinking? Yeah, okay. When you look at these next ones, the pod parent's going to be on the top left, the pollen parent's going to be on the bottom left, and the kid out of them is the picture on the right. And I'm not going to say much of anything about them because, you know, they haven't passed tests, but I wanted you to see what the future of daylilies looks like. This first one here, this is Every Knee Shall Bow, and it's going to be apparent in some of these next ones that Susan's going to show you. And see again, if you can see what I was thinking, trying to achieve when I put the two together. I had no, this was unexpected, you know, to get the chalky eye this big. And if I had any idea how good like Every Knee Shall Bow would be, like the ones you've seen there, I would have made a whole lot more seeds. But, you know, that's kind of the way that it goes. Okay.
Such a pretty color.
Yeah, really odd. And for better, for worse, makes this, if you look in on the eye zone there, you see how it's kind of raised. It's not flat. I mean, you could actually touch them and feel, what do you call that when you're feeling a texture? Yeah, and then, you know, all the kind of lines through it. So that kind of marks its kids. I've not seen white, totally pure white edges before this last summer, so I got real excited. Anna Carlson says it was relief sculpturing. Thank you, Anna. I'm getting old. I forget a lot of words. As you see, I go for real saturated stuff. No spots, no, you know, and I look at sepals really carefully. If you start looking at sepals in pictures you see, and you'll notice how many people don't look at them because they are pale or streaky or spotty or whatever. And it's important the flower be perfect in all of its segments.
That's amazing.
And on other days, it's just a plain pretty flower. Yeah.
It really is amazing how you can take those two and get something.
A different color. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where, you know, you go back and you look at the parent. Well, see, all of them go back to Heartbeat of Heaven. And if you remember that one from the very beginning, that was a lavender. And so this you know, the color can throw back to there. 20 years ago.
Mhm.
The reds have been a little bit harder for me. I want to do reds as well as I do this kind of red, the cranberry and rose red, as well as I do my purples. But they've had a lot of problems. As you can see in this one still has showing some spotting, which to me is a no-no. And the hardiness has also been an issue for me, but working hard on it. If I live this long, you know.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's about as close to,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, that's about as close to blue as I've ever, blue jean blue is about as close as I've ever gotten. I don't talk blue. And somebody just asked, how long do I wait before discarding seedlings? If they're, at least a couple of years.
I like that wash kind of. That's really pretty.
Yeah. Well, the thing about dailies is they touch a different part of people. You know, people like different things, in other words. And so I can look at something and say, and somebody else will be their very favorite flower, you know. So
It's true. It's also
a lot of people just want the really new and interesting things. The average, the big box store people want normal looking stuff, you know. So and the beginners want normal looking things. They get confused by spots and stuff like that.
now since I'm unmuted, the blue in the center of this one, is that really a hard to come by? Like, is it you have to do a lot of crosses
Not
before you can get?
Not for me anymore. It was.
Okay.
It was. But again, that's the lavender blue baby coming through from 25 years ago.
Wow.
It's just, yeah.
It's beautiful. Oh, that joy came down and across that just is like, it doesn't even look real. It looks flat. It's not, I know, but it's really pretty.
Now these are all outside pictures. The only, and the answer is yes, no, I do. I'll talk about broken daylilies in a second. I love this. See how white this is? Oh my gosh. That's just the edge on that. It's just amazing. Somebody asked if I do broken daylilies, and the answer to that is no. And it's because they make me nervous. I like, a lot of things make me nervous. I like really simple, clean, quiet, peaceful looking things. So much like my oranges are all off in one part of the garden way far away. So if I'm having one of those days, I don't have to be too, you know, they make me a little excited. So I don't have to be near them. But a lot of people love different things. So.
Carol, I lost track, but I'm going to keep going.
We're good. No, we're fine.
Okay.
You'll know. This one I thought was kind of an unusual chalky color. There, I hadn't quite seen that look before, which is, you know, sort of ivory with a little lavendery blush. White, almost white.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, this one doesn't do that every single day, but it's wonderful when it does.
Now that's a different color out of those two.
that is. So, you know, that's where you'd have to, you know, trace way back. But remember, again, everything I have goes back to Heartbeat of Heaven pretty much. And so
now, on one like this, you have a problem with the petals hanging up because of the curls or the edges?
This one did not. If you look at the bottom petal, and you see where there's that indent on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
that allows it to open.
Okay.
Really easily. And if that was all ruffled, it's just tiny. If it was all ruffled, then it would be tough.
Okay.
These few of these next ones here are they're not as fancy, but they're really dramatic in the garden. Oh, this one is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was thinking about the next section, sorry. Yeah, I love the patterns like that.
And
How I got that, I mean, wow, from those two.
I
That's
know
why
it's like
fun.
that's why it's like you said, it's almost a truth or dare. Is it going to come out of what's going to come out of that?
Yeah, most plants that you get tend to have a lot in common with their parents, like this one, you know, so you can see like on the top left, that big line. What do you call those?
Midrib.
Yes, thank you. You got me.
Okay.
And so, and the bottom one doesn't have much of a midrib. And so the one on the right, you know, has it sort of halfway in between, and the colors kind of halfway in between, and the edges sort of a combination. So that, you know, this is the kind of the thing what I would expect out of those. But it's really fun when you get something you don't know.
Nice dark throat.
Okay, now I'm going to show you things that have passed their tests and are probable or possible futures. And I won't know for sure until I get them lined out and see how fast they get reestablished and how well they increase. But if you see on the bottom it says future, then I'm almost positive. So let's take a look at some of these.
Okay. Cool.
This one actually does this every day. Go back one.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, which is amazing because for me, normally I only see patterns on cold days. And even on cold days that, you know, they're, and we don't have that many cold days to be fair. So this is on hot days too, and cold days. So that's really nice. Okay, you do the next one.
It's really cool.
And this one I
like
wasn't, this one is a little bit short, but it's kind of funky and people really like the dark color. So I'll probably go ahead with this one.
I'd say that's a yes.
Okay.
I got a name picked out for you too. Just kidding.
Okay, you can email me
No.
names. And this one is sometimes I do just really nice garden. I consider this a dramatic garden flower. And there's a really good place for that.
I always have some room in another pot for more flowers, Carol. I think I know what I'll be doing in the future. They're beautiful.
The good thing about all of these is they've been through one bad winter, which was 3 years ago. You know, the last 2 years were very, very gentle. And I take none of that to be a good test. This current year is going to be tough, but all of these have been through one that killed tons of things. So that's good. Kind of funky.
Nice dark color.
It looks like velvet when you're up close. Always room for more. Yeah.
Always room for more. Even if I have to take out the other ones and put something else in, it's always room for more.
This is one, and maybe some of you can tell me later. This one got so many likes when I did it on Monday Night Lights. And to me, this got as many likes as some of my very best dark purple ones. And I don't understand it. So maybe some of you other hybridizers and growers can tell me why, because, you know, I like this, but it, you know, to me, it didn't have quite as much drama as some of these other ones did, but people just like. So, okay.
But you know what? It doesn't have a lot of drama.
They're nice pastel colors.
Yeah, a lot of people like pinks. Tons of people like those pale pinks. And for me, it's like, give me this one, you know.
That's makes a nice clump, that one.
Somebody asked me on Monday Night Lights why I am thinking about introducing this one because it looks so much like Joy Came Down. And I said, you're absolutely right, but I'm all sold out of Joy Came Down. And I can't make any more because I'm down to like one fan of it. So as long as there's a demand for a certain look, I'll keep doing some.
Nice.
This one makes my heart stop. Okay, so this is what I meant. Some of these look a little bit like what other people do. This one is just a 3-year-old. Look how big that is. That's just 3 years old from a single fan. So there's a lot of room for big dramatic clumps that may not be quite as fancy, that are really tough. And other people do them, and I don't have a, I don't know this form as well as others, but I'll still introduce some of these because they're just such good performers.
I like it.
I was told by Sandy Holmes and some other UFE breeders that this color is very, very hard to get for them in this form. So, which I didn't know. So it's good to have friends.
Mm-hmm. New genetics coming in.
Who know these things? Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Bruce, for that. Yeah, I kind of like having this chat on the screen so I can make comments from that. Thanks you guys. That's helpful.
Well, that's because you're not presenting it. Otherwise, I can't see it unless it would be a distraction for you, and you're actually.
Oh right, you're right. That would be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Pray Without Ceasing has been a wonderful, wonderful parent, as you're going to see here in these next few slides. But that was another one, blew out the door, sold down to a couple fans, and it's very dormant, so it doesn't like to increase inside, which is a problem. And I've got a waiting list of 50 people. This is the one. Yes. This is the one everybody wants. It doesn't look like this it looked like this every single day, 1 year. And then other years, this was one that was in one of those, remember, early on when I showed things on different days, I showed a sort of a dark one with the petals segregated, and then I showed kind of a reddish one right next to it, where it was all, the petals weren't separated from each other. So yeah, this lot of drama.
And that nice dark green throat, it really is, or has some interest in the throat as well. Mm-hmm.
But I've got all my plants outside now, so I'm gonna, it's gonna be a good test to see how I've got a huge planting area of it. So we'll see what its norm really looks like, rather than, just in one single clump. Well, okay. Doesn't this sound like an easy road and a dreamy fairy tale that Karol just went from all this, from nothing to all those wonderful things in 25 years. 31214, no. How can you get some? No. All right, I'll answer these questions real quick. 31214, I'm not certain. I have to have a lot, but, and I don't take wait lists because people who want, everybody, it's like a free option, and you don't have to know how much it costs. You don't have to know any statistics. You don't have to know anything. And before I want anybody to want to get it, I want them to know everything inside and out. I want them to see all the kids, all the flaws, everything. Then what I do is I send my catalog and key pictures to anybody who's ordered from me in the previous year or two, because I want to honor the people who've been with me. I'm thinking of Lori Hankinson here, who's on the line, who's got every single plant I ever introduced, from the very beginning. And, that was such an encouragement, so those people get 4 or 5 days before the website goes live. And usually, no, I've never been sold out till the website goes live, but sometimes I'm sold out after all of that, they've had those days, and then it goes, and then then I'm done. I try to make enough, but it gets really, really, really boring. I mean, I've got a lot of this one, but just multiplying over and multiplying over and multiplying, you know, that's not the joy of what I do. The joy of what I do is making the new stuff. So anyway, okay.
Sorry.
Fairy story now. No, not so fast. The life of a hybridizer. Those of you who are hybridizers will know. You can go back one, Susan. We're just going to stay on that one for a little bit. It's not all sunshine and roses, you know, where you think you leisurely walk through the garden, you put pollen on something that strikes your fancy, collect the seeds, plant them, and up pops lots of beautiful flowers that everybody wants. And I wish it were that simple. For me, only about 1 out of every 400 seedlings makes the final cut to become an introduction. That means in this bed that you're going to see here, of about 1,000 seedlings, there'll only be 2 or 3 that make it out of these into introduction, if I'm lucky. And this area of planting down here happens to be a little tougher than up on top, so we'll see. So that means hybridizing on the scale that I've been doing it is a lot of work, and many people plant a lot more seeds than I do. Not only is it a lot of work, based on my experience and what I've heard from many of my friends who do it seriously, I would classify hybridizing as one of the extreme sports. Okay, where your plants are always in danger, and so is your equipment, and sometimes yourself. Let's start with injuries to the plants. My first year at Springwood, I really wanted to do things right. So I took the results of my outside soil tests to the local co-op and told them what I was growing, and they recommended ammonium nitrate. Well, I spread it all over my newly, we can go back one, Susan.
Oh, sorry, I'm one ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I spread it all over my newly planted seedlings, and I woke up the next day to find that all of them had disappeared. Okay, I mean, literally. There was a temperature inversion overnight or something like that. They literally all burned to a crisp. I thought I had lost my entire seedling crop until a few days later when green leaves started to reappear. Well, you know, whenever I start to feel sorry for myself, I think of the even worse things that have happened to some of my friends. One of them told me a while back that he'd prepared some Roundup for a helper to spray the weeds on his driveway. He returned from town a few days later to discover that 1/3 of his daylilies had died, including all of his new introductions for 2022. That was really sad. Evidently, the helper didn't understand the dangers of Roundup. So after spraying the driveway, he had some left over in his tank. So he thought, I don't want to weed whack all these daylily areas like I usually have. Why don't I just spray what I got left here? Well, you know, more often than not, especially in a place like Minnesota, it's nature that injures the daylilies. In January of 2019, take a look at the left there. It went to 30 below zero with no snow cover in the garden. This next picture is the result in my seedling beds, where I lost 50% of the crop. In a normal year, this area you're looking at here would have been totally green with only maybe a 10 to 15% loss. And some of you who are watching this from the Midwest may remember the Midwest malaise. In March 2012, the Midwest, including Minnesota, experienced record high temperatures. That was in March. You know, we went into the 60s and 70s here. My daylilies came all the way out of the ground and had almost fully formed leaves, you know, like 2 feet of leaves. When our normal super cold temperatures came, they killed all the foliage. Well, you know, okay, fine, foliage grows back, and it did. But what many of us discovered was that the scapes must have started to form in March, you know, as it was warming up underground there, and they were killed off by the cold. So 85% of my daylilies never bloomed that summer. The few that did bloom zoomed to the top of the list of possible introductions, including this one called Shout from the Mountaintops. And I don't know if you can tell here, actually, and you'll see in later pictures, I literally live on top of a huge hill. You can see it sort of going down there. And that hits the big north wind, and that got everything. And so that's how it got its name, Shout from the Mountaintops. Well, it was a boring and sad and wretchedly hot summer. And I spent most of the time reading books in bed, depressed and worried that the plants were so damaged that they would perform terribly at the National Convention scheduled for the next summer of 2013. Well, by the way, all the plants recovered for the convention, which was great, but we had a very cold week. For those of you who were there in 2013, we greeted our visitors in our winter coats. And many of the flowers didn't even open on the second day of the tour, which was a big contrast from the 2007 convention when it was in the 90s and all the people deadheading almost passed out. Live heading, actually, yeah. Well, last spring and summer in the Twin Cities brought prolonged drought and high temperatures. As we were trying to start up the sprinkler system in May, we discovered that the part that sends power to the well across the street in the gravel pit, where I've got about 10,000 plants, that had broken. And even though we were able to get this part fixed pretty quickly, there was a big water deficit for 2 or 3 weeks, and that took quite a while to make up. As a result, the leaves on the plants, and it was very, very hot here in May and June, the leaves became super crispy and the plants made short scapes with only a handful of buds. The year before, I'd had beautiful 3-4-way branching, great flowers, and now they were these little tiny stalks. So it was impossible to evaluate the thousands and thousands and thousands of seedlings down there. And I'm saying now, oh, well, there's always another year, but at my age, you know, it's harder and harder to say, oh, well, there's another year, because you just don't know. Well, in addition, a number of plants, even in the well-watered areas, turned brown overnight and they dropped all their buds. At first, I thought it was rot, but the bottom of the leaves didn't have that stinky smell. Fortunately, when the temperatures dropped for good, all the plants started to grow again and none had died. In other years, we've had deluges of rain. In June 2014, we had storms in the Midwest that dumped many inches. This was Iowa during the Region 1 convention that year, honest to gosh. Because we're situated where I live on mostly high ground, we fared better, but there was standing water in several beds in the gravel pit across the street. And the mudslides covered one lane of the road west of us. It even disturbed deer habitat. So for the first time, they invaded the seedlings down there. You know, I was feeling beaten down by all of the challenges. But as they say in Navy SEAL training, fight through it and don't ring the bell, which is what you do when you decide it's just too hard and you want to drop out. Well, my husband marshaled a small army, and in no time we had an electric fence. Well, daylilies can also be sometimes injured by insects, although outside that's never been a problem for me because we have plenty of natural predators by mid-season to eat the bad ones. That's also one of the reasons I focus on mid to late mids rather than the earlier ones. However, for anybody who has a greenhouse, and this is the first of many, many warnings, insects are a constant challenge. I get all these. It's amazing how quickly spider mites can take over and strip the green off of leaves. And if you see in this next slide, you see in the center there how the leaves are all white and kind of yucky looking, whereas behind them they're dark green. Yep, the spider mites just strip down that little thing within a few days. And then the thrips will actually eat the flowers. The only way to keep them sort of at bay is by using, you can go back one, by using lots of scary pesticides, although sometimes this soap spray works. Well, as we all know, daylilies in the US were a pretty carefree plant until rust raised its ugly head in 2000 from imported plants. I noticed it in the greenhouse a year and a half ago, and I had absolutely no idea where it came from. Perhaps it blew in on what we called the snort storm of April 12th, 2019, which was a huge dust storm from Texas that was written up in worldwide newspapers. It left the snow in Minnesota brown, as well as all of our windows. This is one of my windows. because there was snow on the ground, the outside plants weren't affected because rust needs living tissue to survive. But the greenhouse would have been a different matter since the leaves are green year round and it's not totally airproof, you know, or outside proof. The problem with rust, as most of us know, is that no chemical can kill it. It only temporarily suppresses it. The leaves have to die, and that means winter. So I needed to empty the greenhouse and send all the plants outside for a year, which we finished doing in early July. That's kind of sad looking, huh?
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm going to now shift to injuries, which can occur to equipment some people use in hybridizing. When I started, I knew that if I wanted to keep up with the fancy looks coming out of the South, I was going to need a greenhouse. Although this is kind of greenhouse on overkill, huh? What's enabled me to often see the results of my efforts just a year after I made the cross, compared to 3 years outside here in Minnesota. The greenhouse also protects tender genetics that might be useful. And it allows me to multiply most new introductions much more quickly than I can outside because they grow all winter. You know, I can line out single fans in August and September, and they're almost all doubles or triples by the spring shipping time. A few years after construction, on a cold January weekend, when I was away speaking in North Carolina, the temperature sensor malfunctioned. It thought the greenhouse was 80 degrees, so it opened the vents to let in cold air. The only problem was that it was in fact near zero outside. And I hadn't shut off the water when I left town because I'd never had any problems at all, which was a huge mistake. The water froze and ruptured. It got down in the greenhouse to maybe 10 degrees. Water froze, ruptured connections in this, you see in this next slide here, Susan. See that thing right there along the top? That's what's called a watering boom, and that's what the water feeds into. Well, when I arrived back at the greenhouse, I saw water pouring out the door from this broken watering boom, and there were icicles from the bloom almost to the floor. It was not a happy moment, and it's a miracle actually that I didn't get electrocuted with all that water pouring out the door because the electricity was still on. We discovered that the breaker in the electrical box was plugged in, it was still on, and it didn't have a breaker. We have now, you know, that would stop it. So we've now put that on. And it electrified that boom I showed you, and it burned holes in all the pipes. So we had to replace all of them and a whole bunch of other parts. Within days, all the plants turned white. And you think, why did they turn white from cold? Well, it was because it's so damp in there, you know, because I just watered right before I left. They ended up looking like limp white asparagus, and the place started to smell. Amazingly, only one fan died out of the whole place, and many of the plants multiplied extra fast because their crowns had been damaged a bit. As you see in this picture, sometimes it feels like I'm in the middle, you can go back one, of a cosmic struggle with thunderbolts coming down to wreck what I'm doing. One literally blew up the computer here that powers the watering bloom. And one day when I was in the greenhouse weeding one of the furnaces, when I was in the greenhouse weeding, one of the furnaces, as you can see here, literally blew apart. See that on the bottom? I'm very grateful it didn't rupture the gas line to which it was attached, or I would not be here today to share this tale with you. Well, other days, the wind blows so hard, it literally shakes the roof panes of the greenhouse to the breaking point. We've had to replace 10 of these so far just this year. Actually, right now we've got, we didn't replace them because it's just too cold and dangerous to go there. So we put plywood cover on them. So the greenhouse is a pretty sight. Well, a couple, you know, just when I'm feeling sorry for myself, a couple of my friends have had their greenhouses completely collapse, as you can see here. Fortunately, right now, the greenhouse is empty. All the water pipes are blown out. And so I just need to keep it above freezing instead of my typical 60 degrees, you know, because 60 degrees or so gets those flowers growing and blooming. And fortunately, the huge increase in natural gas prices this winter won't hurt so much. But the new roof panels have gone up more than 50% in price from 2 years ago due to the shortages in resin, and shipping costs are now through the roof. Plus the stuff I grow the plants in the greenhouse, its next slide here is called core, that's doubled in price and it now takes months to get. I may have been sorry I delayed in getting this because who knows what price it'll be today. Well, the next, no slide next, are injuries to our bodies. Yeah, this is when I was having a great time talking with a visiting hybridizer and deadheading at the same time with titanium scissors, and I cut off part of my little finger. You know, this can happen to any of you here. So when you're deadheading, just remember this story and think about wearing gloves if you do it with scissors. Quite a few hybridizers have greenhouses, and as you've seen, lots can go wrong with them. Ted Petit, way back when, fell off his very tall greenhouse roof when he went up there to fix something, and he was really banged up for a while. For me, there was the 11:59 p.m. phone call I got on Christmas Eve in 2017, telling me the temperature was too low in the greenhouse. You can see that temperature alarm there in the middle on the top. I raced there in the black of night and turned on the dim yellow lights, as you can see on the right. I put on my pesticide mask, bottom left, to protect me from the chemicals I'd sprayed in there a few hours earlier, which made visibility even more challenging. Low light, a pesticide mask. I turned up the heat. I walked to the nearest furnace just to make sure that wasn't the problem, and it was still working. As you see there in the bottom middle, see that ground cloth there? I tripped on that because it wasn't completely fastened down at the time. I fell on my face and ended up with 2 black eyes. You can sort of barely see their bottom right, which was a very small trade-off given how much worse the injuries would have been if my mask hadn't taken the brunt of the blow and I'd fallen just straight on my head. Well, then there was the time I got trapped in the greenhouse with the, you can stay on this slide, Susan, until you see it.
Okay.
I got trapped in the greenhouse with the pesticide sprayer running. I had no mask, no tie-back suit, no cell phone. It was below 0. I'd been having trouble getting the main door to close with all, there was an ice that would build up in it, so it just wouldn't close. So I set off the spray and that boom that you saw. I had 15 seconds to get the door at the other end, as you see right here in this slide. Okay, see the door at the far end? I'm standing right at the front of the slide here. 15 seconds to get there. Okay, plenty of time. But when I got there, it was also frozen shut. I had visions of being found dead on the floor a day or 2 later, and nobody had any idea what happened because by then, see, the boom would have already emptied all of its chemicals, it'd be back in normal place, and I'd just be back there at the back of the door. Nobody had any idea. I slammed into it over and over and over again with my shoulder, and I finally broke the ice. Scariest thing ever, which I say now until the next scariest thing, you know, I'll tell you about anytime. Anyway, and then there are the injuries to the heart, which can come from other hybridizers who are jealous of anyone who makes pretty daylilies. It was really bad 15 to 20 years ago. It was mostly guys who took it out on one another. They like to play dirty tricks, and they spread rumors. And there were claims of plants that had been stolen or killed by chemicals. This next slide are these dirty tricksters here. Yes. As soon as I bloomed a handful of nice flowers, several of the guys started in on me. At first, there were lots of made up stories, like I was married to a drunken bum. So I took my husband to a Myrtle Beach meeting of hybridizers where they were all there. He talked to them, he shook their hands. The fake rumors stopped in their tracks. But then it became things like, she will never, ever have an impact on the daylily world. Or, you don't want to get her plants. They are all come from the greenhouse. They're never outside. They aren't hardy. You know, it sure was a good thing I'd spent 20 years in the much tougher corporate world, especially during the 1980s when there were so many hostile takeover attempts, including the company where I work, Dayton Hudson, which is now known as Target. These corporate raiders were looking to make a fast buck by stripping the assets out of companies and leaving many of them bankrupt. Although they had no arrows or swords or guns, it sure felt like they did, since a company could easily lose its life and its employees could be gravely injured from a financial and career standpoint. So although some of these Daylily folks were super annoying, and it might have scared off some folks, it was small ball compared to the kinds of people I'd gone up against. In addition, I felt a really strong calling to finish what I'd set out to do. And it helped a lot to have so many friends who believed in what I was doing and who stood by my side. Well, in 2020, COVID shook the world. At the beginning, the folks at the CDC warned that anyone over the age of 65 to 70 with an underlying health condition had a good chance of dying if they caught it. And of course, I heard, "You will die." Well, I had so many flowers left in me that I wanted to create and share with others. I just hoped with all my heart that I'd be granted the time on this earth and the physical ability needed to do that. That vision of the future kept me going. 2020 was very tough physically. It seemed like everybody wanted daylilies for their garden, not just from me, but from every garden center, every grower. Our regular helpers were unable to come, and I was afraid to hire anybody local to help me dig and wash plants inside the shipping building, since I had to be inside of there to do all the packing. And we just didn't know how long, all the germs would last in the air. Well, as the end of May approached, I was spending 12 to 14 hours a day hybridizing and washing and packing shipping boxes while listening to classical music to calm the anxiety of all the COVID news. I felt really blessed to have so much hard work. It was also joyful to keep my mind off the stresses of the world. My husband dug the last batch of plants on May 28th, just in time to check into the hospital the next morning for long-awaited knee replacement surgery. There were 68 people ahead of him on the waiting list, but they all decided to wait until a safer time. It was a miracle because he got it, and then the hospital shut down elective surgeries the next week. Well, I spent June being a round-the-clock nurse to my husband while he recovered. Most days, it was all I could do to put one foot in front of the other. And I mean, I lost a ton of weight. June was just like a wipeout. I had never worked so hard in all my life. But July brought a new crop of seedlings, beautiful flowers on strong plants. And for the first time in 20 years, almost 100% made it through the winter. The bad news, as I said, was the winter was so mild, it wasn't a good test for them. Although we didn't have as many visitors to the garden as in a normal year, the ones who came were very special. I received a letter from one of them who lived less than a mile from where the rioting had occurred in Minneapolis. Maybe a lot of you saw that, all the fires and the destruction on your televisions. It said, "Thank you for your kindness. We're deeply grateful to you for opening up your incredible garden to us. Times have been incredibly difficult lately, and we had desperately needed a relaxing time. Your home was a magical place for us. We truly had not had a joyful afternoon the way we did there in many months." Well, come December of 2020, I was still exhausted from the physical labor and the stress. So when I got an email to speak to a Daylily group, I turned it down, saying that I needed to use the energy that I did have to continue to create new flowers, tend the garden, welcome visitors, and give advice to younger hybridizers. Honest, that still sounds like a lot. I was sitting at my desk feeling drained And within 2 minutes after I hit the send button, a huge eagle flew right past me within a few feet of my office window. Trust me, this is not an everyday occurrence. This picture and verse immediately came to mind. And it was like, whoa, like God was saying to me, don't worry, Karol, I got this. By the way, ever since then, whenever times are really difficult in this last year and a half, an eagle will fly right past me. Or I'll get an encouraging note, like the one I got on March 1st that probably isn't in your script, Susan, from a woman in Ukraine who wrote that she had my flower called Fear Not growing in her garden in 2014 when the shelling was occurring near her house during the revolution they had there. And she said when she looked at it, she wasn't afraid. Oh my gosh, that one brought me to tears. Well, I'm tempted to stop my talk right here, but I'm not going to. This next part, Mission Impossible Part 2, is going to be a lot shorter, but I thought it would be fun to see this.
Yep,
And
I'll
I
keep
thought-
recording. We're good. So
That's good. Okay. The problem with being a new and very enthusiastic hybridizer is that you quickly run out of room for all of your seedlings that you want to plant. My first idea, in my first year, guys, I did 7,000 tet seeds and 7,000 dips. So my first idea was to convince my husband that it was okay to dig up our front yard, as you can see in this picture here. And then a fellow hybridizer said she had room at their place for most of the rest. But as I said, I wanted to do thousands and thousands and thousands, but most of my seeds had to be thrown away. I mean, obviously this area does not hold 14,000, nor did my friends. So I needed some land. So I drew a circle on a map of the Twin Cities of a 30-minute driving time from our home in the suburbs, looking for anything large enough to hold a greenhouse and an acre or two of daylilies. And then I began to drive in every direction. We were looking for flat, sunny land and a small house that did not need remodeling, so I could stay overnight as needed during the daylily season. Our search brought us to a place exactly to the minute, 30 minutes from home. The views were amazing. There'll be 4 slides here. And the house reminded me of pictures we had seen of Monet's home in France on the internet. So instead of a quiet retirement, we decided to take on a project of epic proportions. This is what the place looked like in the 1930s, to give you an idea of a little bit of its history. You see the old house there on the left with that big front porch. I guess that was all the rage those days, in a dormer up on the 3rd floor. That was where all the helpers lived. Back in 1862, a guy assembled a couple thousand acres and he built all these buildings, which were still here when we got here. So anyway, and these next slides are what it looked like when we bought it in 2000. And there are going to be seven of these next slides Susan's going to show us.
you had a lot of work.
What a mess, but it was enough to give us a vision. And here's kind of a spooky picture that one of my friends took of the house. Well, it's absolutely appropriate because when we walked, the day we walked in to take possession, there were snakes hanging from the ceiling and the banisters and living in the basement between, places we normally have tuck pointing, but I guess the tuck pointing had all gone away and they were just rocks on top of rocks where the snakes lived. Woo, and there were bats that filled the 3rd floor attic. Several people who lived in the house when they were kids have stopped by to visit over the years, and they asked if we had heard the ghosts yet. What they never realized was that it was just the bats banging against the walls up there on that 3rd floor all night long. Well, we spent the next 17 years working to transform this place. As soon as the weather warmed up that first year, we focused on putting up a greenhouse. Installing a new well, adding water pipes to the greenhouse, and making places for seedlings. This area is called the racetrack, and it can hold about 3,000, which wasn't going to be nearly enough if I was going to do, 5,000 a year for years and years and years. So we added lots more areas like this one. This is such a wreck right now. Anyway, the area behind the house was an abandoned gravel pit full of all kinds of garbage and old cars. It was like the local dump. At first, we tried to fix this area up ourselves, but we soon realized it would take years. My husband found a highway crew, and they were done in about 3 days.
Wow.
These are from old slides, so sorry they're fuzzy, but it gives you an idea. We put in an arborvitae hedge in the front yard to provide a backdrop for the plants and some privacy from all the cars that would stop in the road to watch what was going on. I felt so naked out there. Then we put in lots of trees. One of the old buildings got a makeover, and it became the shipping building and headquarters for everything to do with the watering system. And we began collecting rocks for retaining walls like this. Well, over time, we've come to realize that what we were really doing with these big rocks was building homes for all kinds of critters like this one.
Sorry.
Well, then we started on the garden part in front of the house. About that time, we learned that the Daylily Society of Minnesota would be hosting the 2007 National Convention. We worked for years pouring concrete pathways and making roads and curbs. This is my husband there, bottom right, as we completed the finishing touches. And this is an aerial view of what the place looked like 7 months before the convention. If you look off to the left there, which you can't see much of, but over there on the left is where we would be putting all kinds of seedlings as well. So this is the lay of the land. And then this next picture was on the day of that convention in 2007. What I want you to notice here is the size of these eensy weensy trees, okay? They're maples. You're gonna see something amazing happening here. Anyway, I soon ran out of room for seedlings, so we started to build beds across the street, as I mentioned, in the gravel pit. We had to bring in all our own dirt because it had gone down to gravel. See down there on the bottom left, that's the seedling area for planting. I like Google Earth here because you can see where you got empty spots, and it's kind of handy.
Show Carol where she can put some more.
That's right. So by the time of the 2013 National Convention, we'd remodeled the house because we decided we were going to live out there full time. After all this work, we thought we might as well live out there full time. And my husband needed another building project. And so we put in a courtyard. And unfortunately, I didn't have time to plan it until the next summer. And we also added a garden area to the west of the house. The last big project was started 5 years ago when we decided to turn the weedy area behind the house into grass. And we knew we were going to need some holding ponds for the large amount of rain that runs off this hill. And we all laughed pretty hard when Dick got stuck.
Oh, it's like sludge.
Oh, yeah. So now it's time to welcome you to the Springwood Gardens of today.
Mm.
And if you miss any of these, most of these are going to be in the Garden of the Week that's on the internet that Cha-Cha puts together.
It's
This is the
beautiful.
beauty shot a friend of mine took.
Mhm. God,
Look
they got
how
huge.
much bigger the trees are from that first time. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. I love the greens. That's great.
And that pond down there in the back is where we get our water from. Yeah.
Beautiful view.
Yeah. This is I Lava You, taken
Sandy.
by which Sandy Holmes is
Mhm.
Stout Award winner. Very happy. This was when we had, remember this last summer, you guys probably didn't get it. We had huge smoke storms from Canada that came in and turned our weather all hazy. So this here, this particular one you're looking at now with the buses is from the 2007 convention. So is this one. You can see it's how hot it is there. No winter coats.
No winter coats.
Right, not that one. And we had them twice. We had two conventions because nobody would sign up, and we kind of already knew how to do one, you know, so we thought we might as well go ahead. Lots of sculptures in the garden, which are fun year round. This is a great shot that Jason Hallinan took when he was visiting the garden.
Lots of reds.
Working on it. Well, or purplies. Purplies,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Mm. All those blooming at the same time is amazing.
I know. Yeah, this is another one of Jason's shots. He has time to take pictures while I'm looking at 20,000 plants. You know.
Is this an original or is this from the other side? Just looking at the house. This view.
What are you talking about?
Oh, I didn't know if this view was from your original shots before you actually started planting, or.
Oh, no. Which one? This one here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's little town hall. This is
Yeah.
the little town hall next to us. Now, this was right after the, it was a long time ago, but it was right after the big bulldozers had been there and planted the hill.
Okay.
And then this is more what it looks like. We put a parking lot in for buses. This is where the town hall, we own this property, but lease it to the town hall for its little meetings and stuff. So
That's what I wasn't sure if it was still
it's right
in. Oh, look
adjacent
at
to
it.
the walk-in place to the garden. And so this is when it was dialed up for one of the conventions. And this is the gravel pit. And then this is the pond behind the house. And the willows have grown up. And this is our water source for us and for the deer and all the other animals. And this is kind of what it looks like now, except the trees aren't icy like that right now. That ice has melted. But so thank you so much, everybody, for sharing part of your day with me. And I hope you had fun with this. And I guess we're going to do some questions. And one of the questions I saw first, then I'll let Susan take over, is somebody asked why daylilies aren't as popular in Great Britain. And if you're still on the line, or if that was you, and I visited Britain, and you're right, I think part of the reason is that it doesn't get, especially like in the London area and stuff, it doesn't get very hot. And daylilies really, really, really do like temperatures in the 80s. And they also don't, you know, it's never very super cold there, but you know, they're happiest, I think, with nighttime temps in the 60s and daytime temps in the 80s, or even 90s, although I think 80s is probably more ideal for them. And I think that's why, is I think just most of Great Britain is just a little too cool and cloudy. They also love, love, love the sun. So it could be a combination of all those things. But and in goodness knows, they have a wonderful, there's a British Hosta and Hammercal Society there, which Prince Charles is part of and the sponsor of. And they have a magazine there. that's done really, really well. And they have a club there that you might want to look up, and they're doing their darndest to get more. And, you know, daylilies are being bred all over the country. And they're being bred all over. And so perhaps people who are breeding in climates more similar to what Britain experiences could chime in on one of the many, many wonderful daily Facebook forums. That's a really good question. Okay, whoever asked that. People who live in places like Seattle and Portland, you know, in Great Britain, you know, ask those kind of questions and say, people who live in climates, which ones grow well for you? And you'll get answers from all over the world.
Karol, there was one question from Fiona was asking, what zone are you actually in?
I'm zone 4B. And when I lived in the city, it was more protected. It was probably more like 5A. But I'm 4B, but rough, because the wind on top of this hill just blows the snow cover right off. Anything that's not, you know, if it's perfectly flat, it's not as bad. But if you have a hump, you know, it'll blow it right off the hump into somewhere else. So you'll get a big, you know, mound next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Up against a building, you can find a 5-foot mound, and then the plants next to it can have no snow on them at all. So.
I was going to know if Peter was the person that mentioned saying here that why is there so much enthusiasm in the United States is that versus the UK? And you know, Peter, maybe you might have to be the start of it all, and you know, share your love with those that can across the pond.
Yep, start a Facebook group, you know, headquartered in Great Britain.
There you go. And lots of good questions. And Patricia put in, do the deer eat them? But you had mentioned about the deer fencing, and yes.
Yes. That's a subject for a whole nother day.
Yep.
Which is, yes, they're evil. They're just they're big rats, you know. So
they're the rats with the short tails.
Electric is pretty much, anyway, that's a whole other set. Does core work as light and airy enough to protect your plant? Okay, I do not use core. Core is shredded coconut bark from Sri Lanka. I only use it, it's very expensive. I only use it in the greenhouse because I have a mix. In the greenhouse, I use about, the reason I use about 1/2 to 2/3 sand and the rest core. Coconut bark. It's shredded into little fine things, and it breaks down very slowly. It'll last for a few years. The reason I use core is because it's a moisture retainer like peat moss, but it does not have fungal gnats and all those nasty things that grow in peat moss. And so it will retain. I don't have to water, even though I have, you know, so much sand. I can get away with watering only every 4 or 5 days if I water, you know, 1 inch or 2 or 3. An inch or 2. I do an inch to 1.5 inches every 4 days to 5 days, and depending on how much sun there is. But that way you can hybridize any time of the day. I mean, and even on that last day, even on your watering day, if you water like at 2 o'clock, you can still set on the ones at 8 or 8:30 in the morning and still have plenty of time for that to set. Did I ever try perlite? Yeah, I did a little bit of that. But that was early on, and for what it just worked. That was the mix recommended. I use builder's sand, whatever that is. It's kind of coarse sand.
It's got more pebbles to it, at least the stuff we get
it's
around
a little
here.
bit thicker, and they actually love growing in sand. But they just needed that little extra bit. And so I think a lot of people grow them, and you know, when you look in Florida, they don't have any real soil down there. They're good, Megan. Yeah, and outside, you know, like even outside when we, so many questions. I hope you're keeping track of me.
I'm watching. Yeah.
Okay. The outside, I have always tried to use in our old place 1/3 sand, 1/3 peat, 1/3 black dirt. Out here we use our own soil because we have 150 years of virgin, you know, 3 feet deep, black, silty loam. And so we basically stripped some whole areas that we weren't going to need, and put that down on top of this gravel here. And we did mix in some sand on some of the parts that seemed a little thicker than others. But yeah, daylilies love the sand, but they're not as hardy in the sand up here. You know, they're more subject to freeze thaw. So you want to be careful, you know, how much of that you do. And I always put several inches of, just again, for the freeze thaw issue, several inches of the cheapest wood chips I can find, you know, from storm mulch when they chip them up. Because that keeps the moisture in, weeds down, and freeze thaw, which is key.
Two questions, and then I see there's one about seeds, which might be a little bit more involved. What is your favorite daylily?
Yeah, right. The one I'm working with at that second.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer.
I have no, and the mood you're in, and its name, and you know, there's so many what it reminds me of. And you know, as I said, I walk on 5 steps to the next one, and that's my favorite for that moment. Yeah,
I love it. Love it. One of the questions, well, actually, before I get into, there was Monday Night Lights. Now I know for some people that may be on here, they
What
may
is
not
it?
be. Yes. Could you just describe that a little bit and
yeah.
how to join?
Monday Night Lights is the brainchild originally of Mike Holmes, who was concerned several years ago when his wife had cancer and could not be around people, and she couldn't go to meetings, like none of us have been able to, you know, go to these last 2 years. So he thought, why don't we have hybridizers do their presentations, not with words, but just with pictures on the internet? And so then he teamed up with Michael Miller, and they created something that's now called Our House Monday Night Lights. And it's in, I just did the last one at the end of February. It's different lengths, different years, but it's usually February and March. And it's every Monday night, and the hybridizers will show about 100 slides, and then they're all in, and you can view them afterwards for about a week. It's like one of those raves, you know, where you go that one night and then they close down the building for the next night so the police can't catch them or something like that. Well, this is a week-long thing. So you can, and the slides are all in order. You go to the right side of the screen and you just click on all, and you can see the first hybridizer's presentation in order, and then the second ones if there's a second one.
Nice.
And this year we only have about half because Michael Miller got busy taking care of his dad, but it's still a really good lineup, and I encourage you to look at that sometime during that week, because it's the latest and greatest seedlings, you know, so like what's coming,
What's
and-
going on? Yeah. The
Yeah.
daylily rave. I like that. I think I'll have to keep my eye out.
I don't know
see
what
the
that's
after.
called. You know, those parties where it's an internet thing and you send it to all your Facebook friends and, you know, meet here in 1 hour. I don't know what the name for that is. Since
Like a
it's
flash.
illegal.
I mean, a
Flash mob. Yes,
Flash
it's
mob.
a flash. It's a flash mob. Yes, that's what it is. For a week.
So a couple questions that are coming in specifically. What is your process of seed starting, and then fertilizers that you use for your seedlings?
Okay, now mine is going to be different than almost everybody's. I direct plant into those beds that you saw in the ground in the greenhouse. And so I plant them, I have 4 rows in each of those beds, plant one seed 3 inches apart. If it doesn't germinate, you know, I plant one for the skip where there's a skip. And I just push it down about 1 inch with the end of my Sharpie and cover it up and water it, and I'm good to go. I do mine about August 1st, and see, this is not for anybody else, you know, it's in core and sand, and then by April they'll start blooming, which is fabulous. And I can pick, if something's a really amazing thing, I will cheat, not having seen it outside, and I will use it in my crosses with something that's hardy and very good that I know, and then just pray that it'll work out okay. Fertilizer in the greenhouse is very different as well. I have a pH problem. My water pH is very, very high. And so I have to use the equivalent of a mere acid. I use a Peters 2177. But everybody's fertilizer needs are going to be different. Outside, I have it very simple. I was advised along, everybody says go take a soil test, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, probably. That's a good idea. But if you're just sort of normal, a long time ago, I was taught by Dan Trimmer that daylilies are a lot like corn. Basically, they need nitrogen. And so I just use simple lawn fertilizer, not with the weed killer, a simple fertilizer. And I just take my hand, I don't think you see my hand, but I just take a handful and I throw it as far as I can. So I get a big broadcast over my beds. And I almost never do that because I have good soil to start with. And because I mostly do it if I put down brand new wood chips, because that's going to leach out some of the stuff, or if I've planted brand new plants outside, then I'll throw it on. But other than that, sometimes there's some areas I've never fertilized in 20 years because the wood chips, over time just restore that.
The other question was the fertilizer, but that was in the coarse sand. So that's basically what you were just saying, that you use the mere acid in the greenhouse part because of your water situation.
The outside, I would ask other hybridizers in your area who are working outside, or other people who, even maybe not hybridizers, but people other sellers in your area, maybe what they would use. But
I've heard a couple.
Lawn fertilizer is just fine, and you don't need the kind with the high phosphorus and all that. You don't need the starter fertilizer. I'll put the starter fertilizer on sometimes when I have new chips or something, if that's all I can get. But you just really need the nitrogen, I think. But don't quote me. I'm not a science person.
There's a bunch of us on the West Coast. Well, I haven't, because I had chickens at the time, but that use the alfalfa pellets
I've heard
to give that. That seems to be popular over here on the side of the states. And one other person, Sterling, had mentioned your display gardens are massive. Do you deadhead on a daily basis, or just let the spent blooms curl up and drop on their own?
It's been deadheaded twice in 20 years. It was live headed the 2 days of the 2007 National Convention, and live headed the 2 days of the 2013 National Convention. And every once in a while for a regional convention, I'll have helpers do the key areas where people walk by. But that would be insane because my job during bloom season is to evaluate as many plants as I possibly can, which means pictures, means notes, means flags, as many as I can see before the sun and my body, is too intense. Before, some days I can only work till noon, so it's 8 till noon. Some day, in a cool day, I can easily work 8 to 5. And then often I will go out after 5, because I want to see how plants are going to be performing for people before they go to work and when they come home from work as well. So you want to see plants as many times as you can. But it's nice. Ideally, I won't introduce anything that's really gloppy. I mean, that's part of the selection process. Because if it's just one big glop, and that may be the problem. That dark one that you saw that you liked, Susan, it has so many blooms on it that when they're all blooming, they're fabulous. But on the day after, if it doesn't have any blooms, all you see is the slime across the top. And that clears up pretty fast if it's not raining and stuff. But
yes,
anyway,
I'm sure you come around stained. You come out of the garden stained as you're walking through your clothing and your hands. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I get all over my legs. It's always fun. Everybody's like, "What happened to you?"
Mine's all purple.
Yeah,
So.
You got in the ink,
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of.
By the way, lemon juice will easily take.
Oh, does it?
Just buy lemon juice and sprinkle it on your hands and anywhere else, plus your clothes. take it
I will
right out.
I will definitely use that. I'm just used to it, and most of my friends know. They're like, "Oh yeah, she was in the garden," so
Yeah.
no worries. My large garden here. Uh, but I wanted to say, so many people have said thank you, and just are so happy that they were able to spend some time with you today online. And there's still 70 people online, even though
Oh
we
my
have run
gosh.
quite a bit over time, which I'm not a
Do they
problem.
cut, do they cut you off on
Nope, not
the
yet.
Zoom people? Okay.
No, it's because it's Rutgers Zoom, so I'm okay. It's
Okay.
it's not a it's a
I'm
professional.
happy to stay on a little while, answer more questions.
Yeah, if there's any other questions,
Did you, what, it's better to type it, right? To type the questions?
yes,
for people?
yeah, just because of 3 people
That's
unmuted
too
at the
many
same
people.
time.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's too many. Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. I mean, I appreciate the time that you took out of the day.
I did put on the live cap. Someone had asked for that, and if somebody, you can turn it off if it's bothering you. For those that are on, actually, I'm going to stop sharing because I think it's more fun to see people's faces and stuff for me. But they're saying thank you for your gardens, Janice Kennedy. Hello, Janice. And thank you. Lots of thank yous coming through. If there's any questions, please just pop them in the chat there, and we'll make sure. Awesome presentation from Sterling. Excited to see the future.
So, yeah, Carol, it's cold, huh?
Yeah. I was just going to say 15 feet here in Northern Illinois. Holy moly.
Degrees, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, degrees. I'm sorry. From here, it looked like
not 15 feet of snow, no.
That's what I was like, wow. Just it shows you, yeah, I see Bear Grylls. Since you specialize in dark colors.
Yes. And that's I talked about that way back in the beginning. Are you capturing these next 2 questions here?
Yeah,
way back in the beginning, I used the southern flowers that I used were pinks and lavenders. So they had that pink lavender underlay. And that's what I use with my purples. So my purples do not melt, other than maybe one way back when on its really hot sunny day. And those 2 questions were.
Yep. The other ones, can you give some advice about describing the colors?
I personally use food colors. So I use cranberries and lemon. That's sort of how I do, because there's 12 kinds of yellows. So it's either lemon yellow or it's some yellow, what do you call, Post-it note yellow or something like that. So I'm sort of graphic. It would be wonderful if there was a I went to the Royal Horticulture Society thing. That wasn't very helpful to get that one. And then I go to some color charts from paint places and do that, but that's not very helpful. So I think the most helpful thing is, because we have the internet, is to get your pictures on the internet if the pictures are accurate color. And then don't worry that it has to be perfect for registering it. That's, and I still mix up when I'm registering. I say eyes sometimes instead of watermarks, but my watermarks aren't these little faint, sweet things. My watermarks are these big in your eye, in your face things, and they're on the sepals too. So to me, that's a big white eye. So anyway, do your best with Elizabeth as you're turning in your registrations, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep. And I was going to say, there was a question about internet connection. They lost their internet connection, and as they're recording, I'm going to, as soon as we get off, I might have to wait till I get into work so that I can actually use the editing equipment. But I may be able to get that up within the next, I would probably have it up by Wednesday at the latest. I'll put it on Facebook, but I'll also make sure it gets sent out, the recording, to anybody that registered, because I will have your emails. And then you can always reach, I'll put it in the chat. You can always email me at work if you need to too.
The transcript, Jane Graham just wrote, I mean, I can send you a copy of the word for word transcript, but it's going to be on the recording. So I'm not sure. If you need that, just email me. Okay. But the transcript's just a transcript, and it's not much good without the pictures. So and you hear the words. I think it worked. I think Susan, you and I chatting back, it was kind of like we were on a blog cast or something. And I think that kind of worked. That actually worked out really well.
Well, I think too, and I'm sorry, I'm a chatter, so dead air kind of kills me.
It's so funny, but it made it fun. Are there hybridizers I admire? What are they creating? There's so many, who are, to be fair, at this point, I'm really tunnel focused. I know what I want to do, and I know how my things work. And so it's got to be a really special flower for me to want to use its pollen or a seed from it. I don't bring in plants. The thing is, I have not brought in plants because of the rust thing. So it's got to be pollen or seeds. For example, I'm going to answer your question, but I'll tell you, for example, I brought in Flying Purple People Eater. I mean, it came in as a guest plant for one of the conventions, and I really liked it. And then I thought, when I saw it, it's not polyfertile at all, but it's a wonderful plant, and it's big, and it was hardy here. So I thought, well, I make a lot of 7-inch flowers, but I wanted to make my big fancy ones 9 inches. Well, so far all I've gotten are 9 inches UFE things. I haven't got many of them with my ruffles yet, and so I may quit on that one. But that's the kind. But people are doing so many exciting things, and they're marching to their own hearts in where they go. But I don't, do I follow? Yeah, I mean, I catch Monday Night Lights, just so I know what it is. But I can't say that I'm a groupie anymore. If that's
got a lot
fair.
going on.
I don't track. I really pay close attention to what my friends are doing, and stuff. But I know the direction I'm going. Somebody just asked about my names. And all my names are out of scripture, but I try not to be too in your face about it. And so like when I named Woman at the Well, somebody ordered Women at the Wheel. So I'm driving a car and stuff like that. But I like Woman at the Well, it got that name because it's I don't know if you know about it. When we're done, you could look it up. But it's kind of a naughty looking flower. Because it has all these little curls around it and stuff. And so it reminded me of the woman at the well who had done bad things all her life, and she met Jesus, and he said, go and sin no more. And so that's how that got the name. And so I try to find just the right verse that looks just like the flower, and I do a pretty good job of it. So it's fun, but without, it's not, I'm not a holy roller with my names, so.
It's just something that struck you at that moment, as you can see this. There was a question in the chat earlier on about frozen pollen. Do you use frozen pollen?
Yes, absolutely. And I put them in those, I use those little plastic centrifuge tubes, that are 1.5 inches long. And I actually scrape the pollen off of the anther into the tube because the anther still has a little bit of moisture in it. Some other people throw the whole anther. Sometimes they clip off just the end. Someone put the whole thing in, but I would never put that long part in. But the reason to do that is, let's say you see something near the end of the season, but you want to put it on, and it's a late season bloomer, but you really want to put it with one of your earlies to help, or earlier ones that'll be done blooming by the time that later one does. Or you've got an early one that's going to be done blooming by the time the later one blooms. So it's a really good way to then get some good mid-season ones too out of that long combination, or to how do I water all those gardens? Sprinklers everywhere. We call them chunkers. They're chin height on me. Yeah, chin height, neck height. And they just, not in the pretty garden that you saw with, the really pretty shots. Those are down in the ground and they pop up. But out in the fields, they're that tall, and then they just throw the, it's not perfect, the rain's better, but it throws it in a big circle. So I'll do that for an hour and a half. And then I just rotate the neck. I have 48 zones.
Wow.
Up on top here. Yes. So I just run, and then I run each zone about an hour and a half. And so and they pretty much, that's why the second well part broke this summer, because I was watering, and that was to the house. That was really bad, so I had to go to the store and actually buy water for a little bit there. But it's better when you get some rain, so you don't have to do round the clock watering. But this summer we had just nothing. It was
well, and you're also, my well actually went as well. And I know for me here in my little space, I just had to do, it's going to survive. So they weren't as beautiful as they can be, but I still had a beautiful show, even though I could barely water, and we had a good drought in July timeframe for us. But you know what, that's what I love about the dailies. They're forgiving, but I know for your purpose, you're trying to evaluate, you're trying to sell, and it's hard when you can't have them perfect to go out for clients. So.
Yeah, although most of mine, again, if they're in the greenhouse, most of mine come from the greenhouse normally. This year they're coming from outside because I got rid of rust. Which will be hard. I've never done everything from the outside in 1 year. That's going to be a challenge, because in the inside, literally, all the sand and stuff just shakes right. All the stuff just shakes, and the core just shakes right off of them, and so it's an easy clean. Whereas outside, you've got real soil sticking in all those hairs things. Somebody said when to water. When you have 48 zones, you water around the clock.
Yeah.
If you're a hybridizer, well, they always tell you never water during the night because it'll give you, and that's true. You don't want to water during the night if you have other perennials sometimes, because that'll make for fungusy things on the leaves. But I don't really think daylilies care when they're watered. You probably don't want to be watering them. You want the watering to stop before they're starting to open, for sure. So you can, what would I do if I watered? Yeah, I would have them stop before, they're going to be open the next morning. If you're hybridizing, you obviously don't want to be, you want to wait till after you're done and that kind of thing. But I don't with dailies, I don't think it really matters unless you have rust.
Yeah, you
And
don't want to.
Somebody just asked about that. And I'm just going to answer well. You never want to water if you have it in the north. You're going to lose it. Okay, so winter's going to kill it. You don't have to worry, but it's going to look nasty. But then it's better to water early in the day, so the water gets absorbed by the sun, so it doesn't spend very much time on the leaves, because it's the water on the leaves that makes the rust break out. As for rust in a greenhouse, I have no clue. It is not supposed to live in soil. It is not, the greenhouse has nothing green in it, but it is entirely possible that it will live in the soil. Nobody has demonstrated that is true or not true. So I just am gonna pray real hard that it's not true. And it could be, but what I will do in the meantime is do preventative spraying. There are all kind of nasty chemicals that I'll put on every 2 or 3 weeks that is just a guard, against when it might blow in or something. Like
you kind of want to do it as
and
preventative versus
preventative. And I'll be careful about not watering late in the day.
Mhm.
even though that's the most convenient time for me, you know, after I'm done hybridizing and stuff. But that's
And
okay.
I was going to say, depending on the size of your garden too, you could check with your cooperative extension just as a, you know, to bring it kind of back around because every state has a cooperative extension. So you could check in your area to see if they have anything special recommendations for your area, because those in the South are going to have a lot more problems with the rust than most people that are just growing, not necessarily hybridizing. I did get rust from time to time, but in the wintertime, it didn't come back next year. It was always on something I brought in.
It will not. Yeah, it will not in the north come back.
Yeah, but we're at that. We get a
so
lot
far.
of moisture.
Are you on
and
the border?
I'm on the coast. I'm 5 miles from the ocean.
Right, but as
So-
long as you have an extended period below freezing,
Yep.
And the leaves die. You know, I mean, here there's, you know, I don't know how we have no green out there ever, you know, for months.
We
So
have a couple semi evergreens, but a lot of stuff does
if
die
you
back.
do on those, you know, I'd cut them back to the ground.
Mhm.
Just
then, yep.
cut them all the way back to the crown, you know, just to. These
Yeah,
days.
this is. I have to say this is great. We're almost at 3, so I will cut us off at 3. So did you even know that you were on? I mean, I love it. I just love the conversation. Lots of great questions. And Mary is still dreaming of number 31214. I think you're just gonna call it that.
Half the world. But it's not perfect. It is not perfect. It is short. It only has 15 buds. Its scape is not big and thick. It is not 36 inches tall. You know, its kids are short, but its
color.
And its kids are not better than it so far. But everybody who looks at it thinks they know what they think they know. They have the key to it. And my guess is if you put it with that Shannara thing I said, or some of the other people's really, you know, nice taller purples, it would be grand. And I don't think I ever put it with Solidale Gloria, which is another one of my famous purples, because that's a little shorter and it breathes a little shorter. And also,
right, so you don't want more short.
No, and I also, you know, sold down to one fan, you know, and my tiny little display clump. So I guess I should start setting seeds on my display clumps. So
I was going to say either that or yeah, you could do that. Or I was going to say, I'm sure people, well, you want to bring plants into such a large operation, but I'm sure people will donate back to you some plants if you need them to hybridize.
I just say, you know, if just make a seed, you know, or something. That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, but I'm so glad that you were able to join us, and I see lots of thank yous. And for those of you, yes, thank you as well. I would love to see what we can do our club-wise for us, our Garden State Daylily growers. But also, I'm excited because in my regular job with Rutgers Cooperative Extension, my goal as a horticulturist and master gardener coordinator is really just to help get information out to the public, and inspire or, you know, just get you guys excited about getting in the dirt and playing in the soil. Yeah, we want to get out there and, you know, be healthy, keep us sane, especially during everything going on. And I love the letter from the lady in the Ukraine. That was just, that's heart-wrenching to hear, but I am glad that there was something to bring a ray of sunshine. So, but thank you so much, Karol. I really appreciate it. You are a lovely woman to work with.